Hello and welcome back. Now that you're here, we can start a new discussion. This time, it's about one of the most interesting Jujutsu Kaisen chapters that we've seen in a long time. Chapter 265. This chapter contains a lot of development for Yuji's character and perfectly shows us his headspace going into this final battle. And it's got quite a lot of dialogue that I'm going to recap, so let's hurry up and get right into it. The chapter begins with Yuji and Sukuna leaving a mall that they entered after exiting the train station while talking peacefully. Sukuna says he's experienced this before, connecting with a sorcerer in the height of battle. He is most likely talking about Kashimo rather than Gojo, because he then says, "I had thought it was a side effect of cursed energy being born from humans." But then he goes on to say that this feeling is different and questions if it's Yuji's domain. Yuji asks Sukuna to stop worrying about the details and that he made this happen frantically, so he doesn't fully understand it either. He then explains that he just wants an opportunity to speak with Sukuna peacefully for a bit, and he asks that Sukuna indulge his wish. Yuji then walks with Sukuna through a tunnel in his hometown out in rural Japan, explaining that he was born in Sendai but spent about the first 6 years of his life here right after he was born, to stay with his grandpa while he worked. He recently came back for a funeral and wanted to be surprised by how it became a ghost town, but he honestly expected how empty it felt. Sukuna stays quiet as they walk towards a local park, where Yuji shows Sukuna where he spent most of his time hanging out as a child. The park's play equipment is mostly gone, but Yuji isn't upset because he has a bad memory of stubbing his toe there. After reminiscing a little bit more, he spots a flower and calls it a morning glory, which prompts Sukuna to correct him, saying that it's actually a hydrangea and that Yuji is a moron. Yuji then questions why Sukuna knows about the flowers, and Sukuna responds saying he learned them from Megumi's memories. Yuji then ponders if Sukuna would know all about this place due to having shared a body, but Sukuna says that he doesn't waste time viewing memories that he doesn't think are important. Yuji then brings Sukuna to a part of the park where there's a perfect spot for catching crayfish. Yuji challenges Sukuna to try it out, goading him by questioning if the strongest sorcerer of all time could even catch them. Sukuna takes the bait and tells Yuji to be silent as he begins to fish. They both catch a crayfish, one each, and Yuji's excited until Sukuna claims that Yuji's catch is microscopic by comparison, and this prompts Yuji to explain that Sukuna caught an American crayfish, which is much more common than the Japanese one that Yuji caught. They bicker about it a little bit more and then move on deeper into town. They eventually come across a big department store, and Yuji explains that it came to town when he was 5, and it ran most of the mom and pop shops out of business, which caused the town to become quiet. But they opened a movie theater, which made it okay for him, since we know Yuji is such a movie fanatic. He remarks that this part of town doesn't have much nature, but he tells Sukuna not to worry because there's lots of greenery outside of town. And then Sukuna says that he's not exactly expecting much from any of this anyways. Yuji then takes Sukuna to the outskirts and comments on grasshoppers that he used to catch in the rice fields, but he wonders where they went, thinking maybe pesticides have gotten much stronger since back then. Sukuna is starting to get impatient and asks Yuji if this is going anywhere, to which Yuji replies that there is still a few places left that he wants him to see, and that he wants Sukuna to hold on for a bit longer. Yuji takes Sukuna to a farm his grandpa brought him to a lot back in the day. He talks about how awesome horses are and how his grandpa parented him a lot more than his actual parents. But what finally gets a response from Sukuna is Yuji mentioning how good the soft serve ice cream was. He said that he spent his entire allowance on it one day and ate so much that he threw up, which prompted Sukuna to ask if that's where his brainlessness began. And Yuji ignores him, instead wanting to do some archery with him. Unsurprisingly, Sukuna is much better than Yuji at archery due to being from an era of archery, which is reflected by how Sukuna holds and aims his fire arrow. Yuji then reminisces about winter in this small town and how many snow sculptures there would be during the snow festivals, and he remarks that it doesn't snow much in the Sendai colony. Yuji says that he can't really feel like it's actually winter unless a lot of snow piles up, and that he always loved drinking sweet milk tea when he got his hands cold from shoveling snow in the mornings. Yuji's grandpa would tell him that drinking tea wasn't a good idea when him himself was drinking black coffee. And when it got close to Christmas, Yuji remembers always hearing bells at night, which made him think Santa actually existed. But later he realized that the sound of bells were actually just snow chains from car tires. Sukuna has finally had enough of Yuji's memories, and Yuji agrees, saying he's shown him pretty much everything he wanted to. Sukuna says that his monologues are disgusting and encourages him to finally spit it out. Yuji says that he thought if he just lived with the sole purpose of fulfilling his role as a cog, that he would be able to die a proper death. But now he's changed his mind. As the faces of his grandpa, Junpei, Nanami, Nobara, Choso, and Gojo flash through his mind, Yuji claims that even mundane things like taking care of a dog or raising a family are a fine role to give life meaning. He even goes as far as to say that as long as you can live, even if you're sick and bedridden, or spend your life with no connections or legacy, that the tiny fragments of memories of living is what gives value to a human life. Then Mahito and Sukuna flash through his mind, as he says the way someone dies is irrelevant, and that he couldn't ever forgive someone who acted like the value of human life wasn't real. He then tells Sukuna that he hates him, and that people aren't tools or born with any set role, and that he doesn't know if humans are fundamentally good or evil. Yuji wondered if he was the one who had the wrong perspective, so he wanted to show Sukuna the humanity and value of someone other than himself that he doesn't see any value in. And in response, Sukuna says that he doesn't feel anything. He fully understands Yuji and even calls back to how Yuji felt seeing the town become a ghost town after 10 years, saying that just like Yuji, he expected this. He knew that Yuji had a life and humanity, and that it just meant nothing to him. Yuji realizes that his attempt at showing Sukuna the value of life had failed, and Sukuna says that he's surprised by how weak and cowardly Yuji is being. He is disappointed that all of Yuji's rage and hatred towards him only amounted to this. And then Sukuna realizes Yuji's true intention as a look of shock is clear in his eyes. Sukuna realized that Yuji was pitying him and showing him compassion and mercy. Yuji stares directly at Sukuna with hatred and power in his eyes and says, "Sukuna, I can kill you. Release Megumi and return to my body, and then I'll spare your life." Unsurprisingly, Sukuna is enraged by Yuji claiming that he can kill him. Gritting his teeth and straining his entire face, Sukuna viciously claims that Yuji is completely mistaken and that he won't just stop at cutting Yuji into pieces, and instead he will go even further, slaughtering every single human being that Yuji claims to be valuable. Ending the chapter with Yuji failing to appeal to Sukuna and instead enraging him. Now we are left with a week-long break to anticipate the true power and rage of the King of Curses. I really appreciated this kind of chapter. It's very beautiful and intimate, which is the exact opposite of what we've been getting for a very long time. I'm glad that we're getting more of Yuji's philosophy starting to evolve and match his physical development. This chapter continues the theme of Sukuna understanding the things that he rejects, just as he did with love against Yorozu. He simply doesn't feel moved by things like this, and instead is only passionate about his sadistic nature. The story is moved towards trying to talk no jutsu Sukuna, but ultimately, if Yuji wants to change him, he'll have to do it through the only method Sukuna has of feeling moved. There's not much to theorize about from this chapter due to how perfectly this chapter encapsulates a small story of Yuji's life and is mostly disconnected from the overall battle. But Yuji's plan to save Megumi and host Sukuna again is interesting. It signals that Yuji doesn't intend to die anymore. Yuji has managed to motivate Sukuna to fight in a way that practically no one else ever has. Not even Gojo truly believed that he could win with this level of conviction, which makes Sukuna feel burdened with Yuji's challenge to his throne, similar to how he felt facing off against Maki, and clearly even worse due to him resolving himself to passionately slaughter all of mankind. We've also been given confirmation that the scenes with Kashimo and Jogo actually happened, which some fans have been doubting for a long time. And we see an interesting peek into Sukuna's psychology when he claims that Yuji's memories of childhood aren't worth his time to look at, yet he bothers to learn the different local plants from Megumi's memories, and he listens attentively enough to empathize with Yuji's feelings towards his ghost town, and he complies with Yuji's requests throughout the entire chapter. This chapter paints Sukuna as a more sensitive person than most would be led to believe. This chapter was nearly perfect in context, as the Shinjuku battle has been starving for some slower paced character-driven content, and I feel that this chapter perfectly executed its job to establish the next step in Yuji's philosophy and motivate Sukuna to go all out and try even harder to kill Yuji than ever before. Which links back to Raume's famous statement that Sukuna's power wavers based on interest. I'm going to give this chapter a perfect 10 for doing everything it set out to do and leaving me completely satisfied despite interrupting the climax of the entire series. I would go as far as to say that this is going to be Sukuna's peak, and we will see Yuji definitively accomplish what Gojo could not in battle. The one who will teach Sukuna love is Itadori Yuji. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'd like to say that I appreciate you all immensely, and I hope that I can continue to start discussions with you all and engage with you directly for a long time. But either way, I hope you stay safe and take it easy.